Yes, my country people, we don't come today to know about politics today. And today on our show, we dey talk to no other person but Pastor Osage Ize Iyamu, the All Progressive Congress governorship candidate of Edo State. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you, my brother.
The talk no get plenty. Can we know more about you, your educational background, and also your political background?
Okay, thank you. My name is Pastor Osage Ize Iyamu. I was born in Benin. I grew up in Benin, went to St. Joseph Primary School, now called Uwa Primary School. From there, went to Beniza Nursery and Primary School, also still in Benin. From there, I went to Edo College, which is the premier secondary school in the state. From Edo College, I came to the University of Benin and studied law. From the University of Benin, I went to the Nigerian Law School, Lagos, where I was called to the bar, and then from there I did my NYSC in Ondo State in the law chambers. And after that, I did a little legal practice with some of my friends, after which I ventured into business and then later politics. I've always been interested in politics because I grew up in a house that was an open house, a place where everybody comes with their problems. My father listens to them and tries to solve them. So from a very early age, I became conscious of people's problems, and also took a keen interest in seeing how they were resolved. And in 1987, to be precise, when Lucky Munedian wanted to be chairman of Oredo, he came to me to come and assist him to win the election. I supported him and became the chairman of the old Oredo, which today comprises of Oredo, Iko, and Kobaoka. It was a very big local government, and to the glory of God, he was able to do quite a number of things. For the first time, people now realize that councils can actually tar roads. Councils can employ. Even councils can do pedestrian bridge, which we did across the Ubowo Road. Many markets, many schools, many health centers were built. A lot of electrification projects, including the one at Ugbo, was also put in place. And many people were shocked to find out that councils could do so well. I think that was really the launching pad. Even before then, I was involved in partisan politics. I remember that at a very early age, I was very attracted to the political organization and philosophy of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. So in 1979, when he formed the UPN, I became one of those that became a member of the youth wing. The four cardinal programs of the UPN, namely free education, free health services, integrated rural development, and employment for all, was very fascinating to me. And I used to go to the campaign rallies of these political parties, apart from UPN, I also used to go to MPN just to listen to them. And all these ones prepared me for my own political career. And, since then, I've been very involved. And, in 1999, I became the Chief of Staff to the Governor of Edo State. And in 2003, I became the Secretary to Edo State Government. So that basically is the beginning and a little summary of my political life.
This is your second back-to-back governorship election race. What drives the ambition?
Yeah, thank you. You see, I'm very passionate about good governance. And fortunately, I've had the opportunity to be in government, not as a chief executive, but the period I served as chief of staff and secretary to government opened my eyes to so much that government can do if only the chief executive and his team, they are focused, they are sincere, and they are ready to ensure that their goals are met. And there's so much you can do as an appointee. There's a limit to what you can pursue and what you can get achieved. But as chief executive of the state, you can actually determine the direction of how that government will go. And so after my stint as SSG, Secretary to the State Government, I began to realize that I could make a whole lot of difference in the administration of Edo State if I had the opportunity to be governor. And one of the first things that I thought I should do was that many chief executives I've seen ran for office, got elected without a clear-cut agenda of what they want to achieve. They just give summary of what they think they will do. In every campaign, they try to speak to please the people in the audience. But basically, you won't find a written document that clearly articulates what they want to achieve if they were in government. I told myself, no, I need to do things differently. If, by the grace of God, I become governor of Edo State, what do I want to achieve? And that is how, with the help of quite a number of people, we had to come up with a simple agenda. Now, I told those who worked with me that, look, one of the things that attracted me to Awolowo was a very simple agenda that he had. You know, the 4 cardinal program of the UPN. It wasn't too much. And that's why many, many years after, I can still remember what the agenda was. It was very easy for me to understand. You know, free education, free health services, integrated rural development, employment for all. And so, in coming up with a manifesto, let's not come up with something that is bogus.
Yes.
Something that people will not understand. Parties usually come up with manifestos, but many chief executives, many elected people don't even know what is there because it's just simply a bogus document. I said, so the starting point will be, let's make it simple so that even our children can recite it and say this is what it stands for. Of course, there'll be more details in it, but let's make it as simple as possible. So, you know, we came up with the acronym SIMPLE. And the simple, if you allow me, X there means security and social welfare. I there means infrastructural development and urban renewal. M means manpower development. P means public-private partnership. L means leadership by example, and E means employment and empowerment. So this itself became, the summary of our agenda. And in 2016, when I ran, I had that simple agenda, as a roadmap, telling the good people, please, if I get elected, this is the document that you would use to hold me accountable. Look at the promises there, and from time to time, remind me of what I promised. So if I don't do them, you say you wrote it here that you would do this, you didn't do it. And people were very excited, and there are so many people, in the academia, in the diaspora, who called me to say, look, this is wonderful. We thought you were joking, but we have gone through the document and we have found out that it's realistic, it's workable, and we are amazed that somebody for the first time can actually put himself on the firing line by detailing what he wants to do, so that if he doesn't do them, we'll be able to deal with it.
Go back to
Well, you know how the election went. For me, I'm a lawyer, and I respect, whatever the Supreme Court says. When the Supreme Court finally said, the other party won, immediately I sent a military message, and that was it. But 4 years down the drain, 4 years down the road, we are back on it. And the reason why I really believe that I should contest again is the fact that we have still not done well 4 years down the road. If in the past 4 years there's been serious transformation in the governance of our state, I can tell you I might have had second thought to say, well, whatever I wanted to achieve, this man has surpassed them. But basically, nothing has changed. 4 years ago, I quarreled with the fact that we have no teachers in the state. The situation remains worse. Nothing has changed. 4 years ago, I quarreled about the health sector, that there are no doctors, there are no medical personnel. The situation remains the same. 4 years ago, I complained that we do not have industries. We cannot run a state that is totally dependent on allocation from Abuja. Nothing has changed. The private sector is non-existent. Till today, nothing has changed. So when you look at it, 4 years ago, I wanted to run because I felt my state wasn't doing well. This time, there's even a more compelling reason, because, the improvement that you thought you would see, in spite of the money that's coming, has not come. So I am still running, but what I've had to do is that I've had to, review my simple agenda. Basically it's still the same, but of course, certain things must change.
Yes.
So if you look at it, you will find out that I've had to look at current realities and see how we can adjust them. I cannot call it a very comprehensive document, but it's concise, and I've told people that it's also a smart document. It's a document that is specific in terms of what we are promising. It's a document that is measurable. Thank you very much. It's a document that is accurate. It's a document that is reliable. And it's also a document that is time-bound. That's why it's a smart document. Which means, whatever we are thinking of achieving, we are conscious of the fact that we are going to have a 4-year tenure. Don't say 8 years, because the Constitution says 4 years. If the people believe that we've done so well that they want to extend that, that's a different matter. But for the time being, the tenure is 4 years. What do we achieve within that period? And these are the things that is driving one. I'm very passionate. I want to see a better state, so that our own children too would also love the state the way we used to love it when we were young. I want to stay here.
Yes, like in the time of, because I'm from Delta State,
Yeah.
and before 1990 and 1991, we used to be Bende State,
Of course.
and some development by Ugomudia.
Fantastic.
We still see it in Delta State till date.
Fantastic.
And we should pray for that. We'll have someone that will do something bigger than the Ogbonge guy that can surpass them. And now we heard about your defection from PDP to the APC and different challenges. At the end of the day, you became the candidates of the All Progressive Congress. Now, what are your decisions and your values that guide your political activities?
Well, thank you. Firstly, I am a progressive. You know, my politics is people-centered. The real reason why I'm in politics is because I want to use it as an avenue to assess government for the betterment of my people. Basically, that's the reason. I'm not hungry. I can survive on my own. But I've told close friends that if you are rich and those around you are poor, you are poor. You know? So if you understand that concept, then you realize that it's not enough to say, well, to hell with all of them, I'm okay. One day you understand that you can't be an island. You know? So for me, I'm very conscious of our people. And I think that politics is the only avenue through which we can assess our commonwealth. Politics is the only avenue through which we can enter government. And it's government that is the custody of what that we have. So whatever we have is in government. And to be able to allocate it well, you have to be inside government. So to be able to ensure that government employs teachers, government employs doctors, government gives bursary, government creates jobs, I need to be in government. To be outside simply means I will join those who are just lamenting. But if I'm in government, then I will be a decision maker and say, no, this money, let us allocate some to agriculture. Let's allocate this money to road and ensure that it is well done. I'm going to run a government where every money spent by government will be accounted for. You know, and I will get the best price for any job. Because it's government money does not mean I will allow a job that should normally cost 1 billion to now go for 10 million. I won't. So we're going to have a government that will be extremely prudent, that will manage the resources of government as if it is your own. You know? So these are the things that I look at, and I'm a founding member of the APC. I left the APC not because of any ideological difference, but we had issues over the Congress of the party that was in 2014, and a lot of my people said, no, they're not happy, they need to go. And like I said, my politics is people-centered. So when people who look up to you as a leader tells you, leader, we have to leave this place, I have no choice. And I left, and we came to PDP. And, PDP gave me the opportunity to run for governorship, and that's why when I was leaving PDP, I said it would be uncharitable to throw stones in a house where you once lived, or a house that gave you shelter and gave you a platform. So for me, it's not about abusing PDP. It's about looking at the people within the system. As at that time, I looked at the PDP and I felt these people were not very serious in attaining the kind of political goals I want to achieve. I don't want to play, opposition politics forever, because in opposition, I will not be able to give to my people what they want. And of course, I cannot be in politics forever. So for me, every day, is working towards my retirement. So if I'm going to retire, I would like to know what impact did I make when I was in the field. I don't want to be, all my political life I was in opposition. So in opposition, what did you achieve? I want to be known that Pastor Ezeamu was the one who influenced the siting of this industry. Pastor Ezeamu ensured that 5,000 youths were brought into the educational sector. Pastor Eze-Amu ensured that scholarships were given to indigent students who could not afford to pay university fees. You know, those are things that would not be able to achieve on an opposition platform. You know, so when I saw that PDP wasn't as serious as I wanted, you know, and a lot of people were urging me to come back to the APC, I came. And of course, between me and you, if you see the ease at which the present governor now became the candidate of the PDP, you understand what I'm saying? Because there they were criticizing me. How can you just come some months to a party and want to take the governorship? But you are coming a day or two, you know? So what kind of party would allow you come a day or two to their primaries and say they give you the tickets? It means that there was nobody in place, you know? And that's strange, because all of us knew that in 4 years' time, there will be need for a replacement, you know? And it came to the extent that 2-3 days to it, a party had no candidate, to the extent that they had to more or less pull everybody out. And even if there was a contest, you would even say, well, you know, there's always room for contestation. But practically everybody was bullied, intimidated to withdraw, so that the one who had government resources could take it. You know, but there's no problem. God works in mysterious ways, and for me, it's an opportunity to really find out who the Edo people really want.
And as a politician and the candidate for the office of the governor, what are some distinguished factors that stand you out from others?
Well, the first thing is that, by the grace of God, I think that I'm very prepared for the office of governor. Why do I say that? If you look at my political history, you will know that what you are getting is an experienced hand. I've had the opportunity to be special assistant to the chairman of Oredo, so I understand the workings of the local government. I've had the opportunity to be chief of staff, and apart from helping the governor to supervise his office and you know, ensure that himself and the political class are working together, I was also the liaison between the House of Assembly and the executive arm. They had a very harmonious relationship. And I became secretary to government. And during the time I was secretary to government, you will find out that things worked, you know, seamlessly. You know, the kind of awards I got from pensioners, from civil servants, the unions will tell you that, you know, I did very well as a secretary to government. So I understand the workings of government. And I believe that that is a key factor in being a governor, understanding government. I know where the wastages are. I know the weaknesses of government, and I know how revenue can be generated. There are so many things that can be done that is not being done. I was amazed, for example, when during this COVID-19, which is just some months ago, I heard the governor say that he didn't know that Stella Passenger Hospital was this good. That he's surprised it just came now for the first time, and I was shocked. For the governor who has been in office for 3 years to say that he did not know how the best hospital in the state was, shows complete lack of preparation. For me, where are you going to show me in Edo? I've always lived here. I've always lived here. So you're also talking about somebody who understands the terrain. I know the 18 local governments, I know the 102 wards. I've in the past visited many of these places. So whether you're talking about schools, or you're talking about hospitals, or you're talking about agriculture, or you're talking about industries,
We are talking about somebody who understands the terrain, not a stranger. And I'm coming in with passion. I want to do well. You know, people ask me, oh, Pastor, why are you interested in being governor? I want to make a difference. I want to make a difference. You should be able to understand that there's somebody out there who wants to make a difference. Who wants to make a name. You said it just now. Why can't I do better than Ogbemudia did? He's not a human being. And there's nothing Ogbemudia did that is, you know, extraordinary. The important thing of Ogbemudia was a Benin man who had the opportunity to be a military governor and said, let me make a name. And that is the same thing. I come from a privileged background. My great-grandfather built the first story building in Bendel, in Midwest. So I'm walking on big shoes. So I also like it to be said that, when Pastor Osagie Ezeayam was governor, look at the industries that were put in place. We are taught that it's not possible. But surprisingly, this man has brought industries. Look at people working in all these places. We never thought it could be done. Pipe-borne water has come back. We never thought it was possible. Hospitals are functioning. We never thought it was possible. These things can be done if only you are genuinely interested in doing them. We have governors who just see Edo as a place to enrich themselves, and after which they will leave. But somebody like me, where am I going to? I've told people this is where I was born, this is where we died, this is where we'll be buried.
Where you school?
Yeah, but this is where I schooled. I'm a local person. Some people laugh at me. I say, no, I love it. I'm local. When I go abroad, after 2 weeks, I can't stay. My body begins to revolt because I'm a local person. The environment will not help me. The food will not help me. So this is the only place I can stay for months, years, and I'm comfortable. Even when I go to Abuja, the moment I know what I'm doing, I'm itching to go back. I go to Lagos, I want to come back. So it's in my blood. And for me, I want to make this place better. I'll tell you the truth. Edo was a fine place when I was growing up. Sometimes when I tell people, they are amazed. I say, look, do you know that as a young boy, I had a choice of up to 3 or 4 cinemas to go to in the evenings. Unlike today where, if not for Kada Cinema, there's no cinema place in Edo State. As a young boy, I had a choice of top supermarkets. Kingsway was as good as ShopRite. Leventis was solid. Everything you wanted was there. If you go to Forestry, all the latest clothes from abroad, you will see them there. If you go to Mission, all the latest music, you will see them there. We have street lights. We never sunk a borehole. I come from a privileged background, first story building in Benin, but there was no borehole. The water we were drinking was from the public main. We open it, we don't treat it. We're treated and we drink from it. We never fell sick. The water was coming from Ikpoba River Dam. We're treated. In the evenings, you will see vigilante going around. Anybody walking by, they will call you, who are you? You identify yourself, okay, go. There was no crime. I went to a public school and I had the best of education. I went to Edo College and I came with a grade 1. I went to University of Benin. When you see the meals we eat, on Sunday, they will give you jollof rice with a quarter chicken. And you have the right to go and take orange juice if you don't want water. I saw these things. In 1980, Bendel State gave us Bursary Award for being an Edolite. The state government gave me serious money. Do what you like with it. Some of us bought books. Some went abroad for the first time. Some gave their parents money from the state government. Even those abroad benefited. These were the things we enjoyed. My 2 elder brothers who went abroad, as they were graduating, one of them got a job in Bendel Building. 6 months after, they gave him a brand new car as a graduate employee. My other brother, who got employed in Vendor Development Property Authority, 6 months, they gave him car loan to buy a brand new car. So when you look at that era, and you look at now, the difference is frightening. Who is going to employ anybody? Who is going to give them car loan to buy which car? A brand new car? Which university will you eat? Where are street lights? Where is pipe-borne water? So when you look at it, you ask yourself, what is the problem? And the problem is leadership. Leadership. Let's not continue to deceive ourselves and give the impression that it's impossible to do well. And then, governors that get billions on a monthly basis, we just do a little, they pay salary regularly. Is that an achievement? The salaries are paid? That's no achievement. A workman deserves his wage.
Sure.
Of course. So how can you tell me that, can you not say I did well? I'll pay salaries. And deliberately, you have ensured that the workforce does not grow. The same number you met is the number you keep. In fact, they are decreasing because people are retiring, but nobody is employed. What kind of system that does not allow room for growth? What kind of system that does not take into cognizance the younger ones who are coming, who are graduates, and who have so much to offer? You don't take them. So in the past 4 years, for a governor who promised 200,000 jobs every year, which would have translated to 800,000 jobs, the first question is, in the educational sector, how many people did you employ? None. In the health sector, how many people did you employ? None. In the industrial sector, did you establish industry? Did you employ anybody? None. What they talk about, and it's so ridiculous, that we train some people. So those people, they translate to 150,000. You trained them. Did you find out what they did with your training? Did you give them any startup pack? Did you give them any startup capital? You took them for training. Yes, they were trained. So what has happened? They are back home. Their frustration continues. Just like their parents trained them when they took them to university. But that does not guarantee that they have jobs. And in the atmosphere of insecurity you have created by your political statements, I will crush opponents. I will deal with them. My second term is non-negotiable. You have scared away potential investors. There's so much tension and so much fear. So nobody's coming here, nobody's establishing here. So when you look at the situation that we find in ourselves, it's sad. And for somebody like me, who has nowhere else to go, I must be in the forefront of those who say, no, it can't continue like this. We must do something to change. No matter the blackmail, no matter the intimidation, I am determined that we can do better than what we are doing right now.
Thank you very much. In your simple agenda, you have a lot of bold policies, and I would say your set goals on your administration. If you emerge as a governor, which agenda will you specifically pick out that this is different from others?
No, basically, there's nothing that one has mentioned that is not important or that is even entirely new. Take, for example, when you say security. Security is not a new word, but you know too that what we have here is insecurity. And it's difficult to encourage businesses in a place that is notorious for insecurity. It means that we need to invest. Now, when I was in government, security vote for the governor was around 30 million. Eventually, it came down to 100 million a month. For some of us, that was quite a large amount of money, 100 million a month. When I left the government, during Dr. Shomole's government, it became 500 million. And when I was campaigning, I actually quarreled with that amount, because for me, I felt that 500 million was a bit on the high side for a state like Edo, where the revenue was still relatively low. So 500 million being given for security every month was on the high side. And again, when I made inquiries and found out how much was being given to the Edo Police Command, which basically is in charge of security, I found out it was 5 million a month, which meant that government was giving the institution charged with handling security 1%. And I said, no, if you are giving somebody 1%, it means that that thing is not important to you. So I can understand why there's so much insecurity in Edo, because, you know, if you are giving 1%, it means that nothing has changed. Now, guess what? A new governor came in and he moved the money up. 500 million is too small. I moved it from around 6 billion, you moved it to around 7.5 billion, which means that on the average, you are now collecting over 600 million a month. The shocking thing is that in moving this money, the money to the police remains the same. You left the police money at still 5%, at still 5 million a month, which means it's now less than 1%. If I am governor, I must invest in security. The police, the DSS, civil defense, traditional institutions, vigilante groups, we must give them money for security. Because security will be the basis to attract people to our states. And apart from security, we're also talking about social welfare. Government itself must have a covenant with our people. What are you doing for your people? How do you support them? And that's where social welfare comes in. In many advanced countries, government creates a welfare package for our citizens, especially those who are elderly, or the very young, or the ones who are indigent. We must have a policy where we can support the elderly, we can support the sick. We must have a policy in our hospitals that there are certain ailments that do not require payment before they are treated. So we are coming in with, a realistic approach to governance. So it's not just which area alone. We focus on security. We focus on job supervision. It's not enough to give out jobs. How are these jobs being executed? What is the time span? Who are getting these jobs? For me, I will tell you this without any hesitation. Almost all Edo jobs should be given to Edo people. A lot of money was spent in renovating the stadium. And I was surprised to find out that 100% of those who were working there were non-indigenous. That's an insult. Those who pay the taxes, those who live in the states, do not benefit from the money that comes from their states.
French for local content.
Correct. You yourself know that you cannot do that in Delta. They will close the place. It can't work. It can't work. Because our brothers there had to become militant in fighting for their rights. Our people here are not docile. But in trying to be peace-abiding, all their rights have been taken away from them. So we want a government that will patronize our people, give jobs to our people, let our people enjoy the benefits of having the government in place. So there are many things we intend to put in place, many innovations. But I can bet you that in 2-3 years, you will come to Edo and you'll be proud of what we have achieved within so short a time.
Thank you very, very much. You practically have answered most of our questions, and it was a wonderful and power-packed interview.